Well, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our friends from Oxfam America. Oxfam America, we are very lucky and appreciative of them joining us in this advocacy days. The experience they bring, the years of credibility they bring, their ability to bring folks from around the world as well as locally together to offer us another set of stories, another set of narratives to add to the story we are going to be bringing to Capitol Hill, another set of stories that we bring back to our people in our own congregations and parishes and ministries back home. They are very generous in being a sponsor this year and providing this lunch and this opportunity to share the food, so we thank them for the food. Should have thanked them in the prayer too. So we'll do that as a coda. God can understand that's the thank in the prayer. But also, we really thank them for the experience they're going to be sharing with us and a topic of really understanding an element of this food systems and the use of land and where land's at that'll be very important as we continue to build this movement, not only for what's going on Monday, but for the future. So I'm not going to take any more time, so without further introduction, I introduce to you Oxfam America. So, Galen?
Thanks for the introduction. Can you hear me? Check. Check, check. Okay, I just got to get closer. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm sorry to report to you that it is a beautiful day outside. Really gorgeous. I think the cherry blossoms are finally out, and you're really missing out on the day. But I'll tell you that it's more beautiful inside here than it is outside. And it's wonderful to be here. When I got here today, I just felt this energy, this incredibly positive energy of all these advocates and believers in social justice coming together for this event, to exchange and to share each other's energy, and then to go try to make something happen in the political realm. So I really thank you and also rejoice with you in being here, and hopefully you'll get to see some cherry blossoms. But anyway, it's a better experience inside than out. My name is Gawain Kripke. I'm the policy director at Oxfam America, based here in Washington, D.C. In case you don't know who Oxfam is, we are a nonprofit international development and humanitarian agency. We're affiliated with a network of organizations around the world, and we have programs in more than 90 countries around the world. We don't take government money in the United States in order to maintain our political independence and our ability to speak truth to power, as it were. So that's who we are, just very briefly. We've been involved in the ecumenical advocacy days for many years as supporters on panels and supporting elements of it. But this is the biggest interaction we've had. We're really honored and pleased to be able to support it, ecumenical advocacy days. But let me tell you that there's no such thing as a free lunch. And so I hope it won't be painful, but you are going to experience and learn something, hopefully, from our partners and allies who are working for social justice around the world. So I'm going to make some brief introductions of our panelists, and then they'll come up and give you presentations from their work. And if we have time, I hope, at the end we'll maybe have some question and answer period. So I'll make some introductions now so I don't have to keep coming up and down of each of the panelists. So make mental notes of the people that you're going to hear from. The first is Laura Hurtado. She's the coordinator of campaigns and advocacy for Oxfam in Guatemala. She has a doctorate in social sciences from the Latin America School of Social Sciences in Guatemala, a master's from the University of the Valley of Guatemala, and sociology degree from the University of Paris. So she's very well qualified. And she's also worked for other NGOs like ActionAid in Guatemala, and her work relates to social justice, and in this case into the competition for resources in Guatemala. Next, we'll hear from Augustine Niebuhr, who's the executive director of the Center for Public Interest Law, which is a nonprofit working on human rights in Ghana, working to make justice accessible to the poor and marginalized communities of Ghana. His organization provides free legal assistance, including courtroom representation to communities that have been negatively impacted by mining companies in Ghana, and they've successfully won or settled out of court for several cases. So he'll talk about his experiences there. And last, we'll hear from Sandra Carolina Asensio from El Salvador, who is an advocate in the areas of health, human rights, and ecology for Salvadoran communities and individuals. She studied biology at the University of El Salvador and is certified in environmental education, systemic crisis, and has training in legal education and climate risk. She's worked for years with Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation, an organization of Franciscans whose mission is to care for the poor and marginalized. She's advocated for human rights and to be peacemakers and respect and care for all creation. And she's currently a mining program representative. And she works on the Commission of Human Rights at the Queen of Peace Parish in Soyapango, El Salvador. So try to keep those biographies in mind from El Salvador, from Guatemala, and from Ghana. And I'll come back up when the presentations are over if we have time and do some questions and answers. So without further ado, let's hear from Laura.
Okay, good afternoon, and I don't know how to say it in English. Buen provecho.
In English, it's bon appetit.
Bon appetit. Okay. So I'm going to speak to you briefly on what's going on in Guatemala with the land grabbing. And I will start saying that land and food justice are linked. And they are very directly and evidently linked in countries such as Guatemala, an underdeveloped country whose national income is a portion is very linked to agriculture, and a very big portion of its population depends directly on agriculture. Nevertheless, in the last decade, Guatemala's self-sufficiency in food has diminished very rapidly. For example, we produce no more our wheat. We used to do it last decade, but right now we are producing very little wheat. And perhaps somebody will say, but corn, maize, is the main product, the main crop in Guatemalans' food. But this is also decreasing the production. And so we are facing every cycle a food crisis, very, very deep crisis. And this depends a lot, is the result of multiple factors. And I will say that these multiple factors are high price of oil and energy related to costs, the reduction of grain harvest in producer countries also, the increase of the demand for grains in other countries, especially in the emerging countries. Also, another factor is that food now is a commodity. Climate change is also a main factor. We have frequent natural disasters in Guatemala, which impact on food available. But I can say that a main problem is the reduction of land destined to food production. I want to present you the case of the Polochik Valley. When you enter to the room, outside to the living room, you probably saw on the table of Oxfam some sheets to sign on, because Oxfam decided to work on Polochik Valley to show like an illustrative case to show what's going on in Guatemala. In the picture you have the Polochik Valley. It's a very good soil, fertile and arable, but right now it has been taken by sugarcane and palm oil plantations. And in the front of the picture you have the milpa, the corn plant, which is the source of the main of the food for the communities, indigenous and peasant communities. So what has happened is that people have been evicted from the valley, and they are just cultivating on the mountains. And here on the map you can see how they have been pushed to the edges of the valley. All the communities go around there's a triangle. So the communities shown in the map, they were evicted from the valley since sugarcane and palm oil companies established in the valley. So it's important to say that the market for biofuels, because sugarcane and palm oil are plantations that are expanding at a very accelerated rate because of the biofuels market. And this entails evictions of local communities, indigenous communities. I made an error in the date. The eviction of 14 indigenous communities was done in March 2011. And this is done with human rights violations. Eviction of peasant communities entail human rights violations. Here you can see the evidence of what did the police with the army and also private guards of the refinery and the plantation. People are originary from this region, and they have no longer the right to enter to these places that are right now private properties of the plantation. And these communities depended on what they cultivated. They were evicted, but also their crops were destroyed, and you can see there their food being burned. Yet, just on February this year, since there is no solution over 2 years, there's yet no solution for them. They were planting at the shore of the river, about 100 meters. The Constitution, Republic Constitution, says that nobody can own 100 meters on the shore of the rivers. So this was the only place they could raise their crops, and even that was destroyed by the enterprise. So right now they are living with relatives, or they are renting for a very small place, but they have really a hard time to pay their places where they are living, because they know they don't get any longer jobs because they are seen as illegal settlers. So this morning you were asking where is the hope? Where does the hope comes from? And I will say that in Guatemala we find our hope and our strength to continue to struggle for social justice and food justice on organization, community organizations. So Oxfam decided to bring up, to show this case, and we are engaged in strengthening our partners' organization. We are engaged also in making diffusion and to let know, updating the information and diffuse all the information about what's going on, update the information. We also try to make alliances, and we are making a online and offline campaign to ask the American States International Commission to maintain the precautionary security measures that were established for helping these 14 communities, because the government wants to throw them away and said that it's already done with these communities. And we are also supporting the peasant organizations. They are organized. They went after 1 year of being evicted, the communities. They did a march of 200 kilometers just to to show their case and to place it in the government agenda. And the government said, okay, we are going to give you new land to be resettled. And the government was committed to satisfy this compromise in 2012 for the first 300 families, and do it so in the next years. But up to now, we have 2 years going on since the evictions, and nothing has been done. So this is why we are doing this public campaign, and we are promoting the signature of a petition directly to the government in order to make real this commitment. And we ask you to sign up for the Polochic Valley. So that's it. Thank you very much. We have sheets for signature outside, but also you will find information and a link in the web of Oxfam. Thank you. Webpage.
Okay, next we hear from Augustine from Ghana.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. The mic is not on? Okay. Can you hear me? Good. Yes, I am going to look at the impact of mining in Ghana on agriculture generally and its effect on food security in the country, and go ahead to talk also about the work that we've been doing to help mining communities. Start with a little bit of background. Mining or minerals generally in the country is vested in the president wherever found on behalf of the people of Ghana, and thus granting the president the power to grant mining leases to mining companies. In Ghana, for example, we have 3 kinds of land ownership: private ownership, communal ownership, and then government lands that is compulsorily acquired from either private or from communities. Mining concessions predominantly are granted on private and communal lands. And many a times, and very often, such leases are granted without the communities or persons affected taking part in the decision to grant such lands. As we speak, about 30% of the country land surface is currently granted for mining purposes. This is the map of Ghana, and as you would see, the yellow coloration, and it's all under concession, and active mining is taking place throughout the country, Ghana. The method that is used in the past was underground mining that could allow communities to continue to farm on the surface of the land whilst mining go on underground. But the new technology is surface mining, which is the kind of open cast that creates a lot of open pits, remove vegetation, and virtually interrupts the ecosystem flow, and usually results in permanent land loss to farmers in Ghana. Mining generally, as you saw from the map, is done in the Ashanti, Brunahafo, Western, and Eastern region. Of late, it has been extended to the northern part of Ghana, where food security has been very precarious and it's a serious problem in those areas. These regions are considered the food basket of the country, and they are the areas that surface mining is taking place. Newmont, for example, in its Ahafo mine, have displaced about 20,000 farmers in its first and second phase of its operation in Kenyasi. Mostly in Ghana, most of the farmers do subsistence farming. Goldfields Ghana Limited, in 5 years of operation, displaced over 30,000 farmers. In Takwa, for example, about 45% of farmlands are currently covered by pits. Very often, this is the type of picture that people see when they go to their farms. Mining area, no further farming. And you sometimes would not understand it, but that is what you see, and you wouldn't be able to know who to consult in relation to that. What you are seeing are degraded farmlands in Takwa area. These were communities that have been displaced and opened up for mining, and this is what had been left at the time of the close of the mine. Mr. Osei, one of the farmers in Tebere Bay, one day got up and went to his farm, only to find the farm covered with mine waste that had been dumped on his piece of land without any word or compensation. This palm plantation that you are seeing is an area that has been granted for mining, and the palm plantation will go in no cost. Don't mistake the left picture as a river. It is not a river. That is a trench that has been dug by Golden Star Resources around Pristia that have accumulated water and looks more like a river. The left-hand side picture is one of the pits that have been left uncovered and then accumulated water. Mining is also associated with pollution and frequently results in toxic waste that cause pollution to water. About 75% of major rivers in the country are polluted by mining activities. Out of about 160 rivers and streams in Obuasi, where Anglo Gold Ashanti operates, about 147 of those streams are contaminated and polluted. In Takwa, where Goldfields Ghana Limited and Golden Star Resource, a US-based subsidiary, operates, about 117 rivers and streams are highly polluted. Large areas of Obuasi, as I indicated, where Anglo Gold Ashanti operates, the land is no more suitable for cultivation of food crop because a research that was conducted by Third World African Network indicates that there have been serious poisoning of local crops in the area. oranges that were taken and analysis run on them show very high arsenic and other forms of heavy metals in those oranges. As a result, people within this community find it difficult to sell the products or crops that they are able to produce locally because they are said to be contaminated as a result of the pollution that takes place within the area. This is a tailing dump. When the mining ore is extracted, it is mixed with a chemical called cyanide, where the extraction of the gold is taken, and then the waste, which is a kind of a sludge, is dumped. More often, the tailings dumps are not properly prepared, and this chemical leach into the groundwater or surface water and all those things. We also have serious acid drainage issues in the area, as this is what eventually is left, and this run into most of the rivers and pollute the rivers and streams. We've also experienced frequent spillage of cyanide. In 2001, Goldfields Ghana Limited spilled cyanide into many of the rivers in the Takwa operational area. 2003, 2004, Golden Star Resources spilled cyanide that contaminated Dumasi area. Newmont Ahafo Mine in 2009 also spilled cyanide into many rivers, and these spillages generated a lot of concern for people because it killed a large number of fishes and imposed very serious food security problems for these communities and the nation as a whole. The spillage of cyanide in Dumasi, this was what the community members saw. They were gathering fish that had been killed by the cyanide pollution. Those that were unaware that the fish was killed by cyanide ate and had so many problems. These people were collecting it generally to send to the state agency for an examination and analysis as to establish the content of these poisonous substance that have gotten into these fishes. The left-hand side picture is a mine employee of Goldfields Ghana Limited. And what was he doing? His duty was to go around all the running water and ensure that he picked all the dead fishes in order to conceal the spillage that had occurred in the area at the time of the spillage. The right-hand picture depicts a community volunteer who is displaying some of the fishes that have been killed within their community. Mostly, this is the type of signposts you find in many of the streams and rivers along the area where mining is taking place. Bold notice, do not drink this water or do not swim in this water. If you walk through Obuasi, you would see many of these streams with this type of signposts, and this is creating a serious water situation too for these communities because pipe water generally do not run in these communities, and they depend on these streams for fishing, water to drink, and even to grow crops and other things. Relocation and displacement of communities have also been very serious within the area. In Yayasu, for example, community members were required to relocate for Newmont Ghana Limited to dump mine waste in their community. They were trying to resist this forced eviction because they had sacred mausoleums around the area, and then also had about 13 other cultural sites that would be destroyed as a result. A community leader put their plight and the plight of many mining communities in Ghana in this form. All night I stay awake. I cannot believe what I'm hearing. They want us to remove our souls so they can put the effect of the degradation of our soils in their place. It is agonizing. To add insult to injury, Newmont has destroyed our cocoa farms that feed the community. Most people have had their farms bulldozed. Mami Akosia Apiedia, that's a woman, and James Nkansa were going to harvest their cocoa. When they arrived in their various farms, bulldozers were at work. Their entire livelihood had gone. It took a lot of counseling to get them to regain their health. Now they say we should leave our town and settle in another community. We have nothing to eat. They have destroyed our farms. What are we going to feed on in another community? This was how Opanyi Kwajo Buahini captured their plight in relation to the eviction. Well, some few days later, this was what happened in Yayaso. Armed policemen surrounded the village, and most of the men had left. It was only the women and children who were surrounded, and the community was eventually evicted for Newmont to dam the mine waste within that area. It is important to note that community participation in decisions regarding mining is very important, and that communities' prior and informed consent is a very important requisite that we entreat should happen within these mining communities, and that communities should have the power to be able to say, yes, we want mining in place of our farms, or we do not want mining. But often, that is not the case. Communities do not have a say in many of the decisions that take place in our country relating to the grant of mining concessions. My center, the Center for Public Interest Law, with the support of Oxfam, have been able to provide some form of free legal representation to many of the affected communities. We've been able to provide them with legal representation to obtain some form of compensation from many of the effects that they've had relating to mining, such as the destruction of their farmlands without the payment of compensation or the payment of inadequate compensation. We've also noted that within these communities, most of them did not even realize that what is going on was a rights violation. And so we introduced the human rights education aspect of it to empower these communities to be able to stand and demand a respect for their rights. I am inviting you all this afternoon that after this walk to the stands of Oxfam America just outside, you would be able to learn more about what is going on in the extractive industry, and whatever form of help that you can provide, is more welcome. We would invite you to join most of the campaigns that are going on in trying to ensure that we have transparency, in trying to ensure that we have the rights of communities respected, in trying to ensure that we have community participation in decision-making in relation to mining, in trying to ensure that communities' capacity is built up to ensure that they demand their rights. Thank you very much.
Last we hear from our guest from El Salvador, Sandra Carolina Asensio. Sophia, why don't you introduce yourself also?
Good afternoon, everyone. We feel really honored to be here. Thank you. My name is Sofia Vergara. I'm the organizer for the extractive industries at Oxfam. I'm based in Boston, and today I'm going to be translating for Sandra.
Bueno, gracias y buenas tardes. Lamento mucho pues no poder hablarles en inglés.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and I'm sorry that I cannot speak in English.
Pero traigo un saludo de paz y bien en nombre de toda la comunidad que yo represento en El Salvador y en el mío propio también.
But I bring my hellos of peace and good in name of all the community of El Salvador and the communities that I represent.
Bueno, mi nombre es, como mencionaron, Sandra Carolina. Soy franciscana seglar y estoy representando a la Oficina de Justicia, Paz e Integridad de la Creación de la Orden de Frailes Menores.
My name is Sandra Carolina Asensio. I represent the Office of Justice and Peace from the Order of the Minor Franciscan Order.
Y estoy delegada por la Mesa Nacional frente a la Minería Metálica para compartir con ustedes en esta conferencia.
And And I come in representation of the coalition called the National Roundtable on Mining in El Salvador, and they sent me to represent them here today.
La Mesa Nacional está conformada por 20 organizaciones que estamos representando a las comunidades.
This roundtable called La Mesa is formed by 20 organizations that represent the communities in El Salvador.
Las organizaciones que conformamos la mesa somos de distintas naturalidades, hay religiosos, hay de desarrollo social, ambientalistas, de defensa de derechos y de investigación.
And it's a coalition of various organizations that are coming from different areas. Some are religious, some are working on social development, some work on environmental issues, others are from the research arena, and we're all together.
Y nuestro principal objetivo dentro de la mesa es luchar porque la minería metálica sea erradicada del país, que no exista.
And our main goal as a coalition is really to ban metallic mining in the country.
Estos son parte de nuestros aliados y amigos que tenemos en Estados Unidos y en Canadá, y únicamente traigo algunos ejemplos de ello, pues no podía ponerlos a todos.
And this is just a few of some of our big allies and friends around the world, in the US, in Canada. These are just some of the logos of all the groups. I could not have a space to put all of the groups that are supporting us.
Bien, como dije antes, yo soy franciscana seglar y les mencionaron que tengo ya pues 10 años de estar participando dentro del proyecto de la espiritualidad franciscana.
As I said before, I'm a Seglar Franciscan, and I've been working in this project with the Franciscans for the past 10 years.
Y pues lo que a mí me motiva a entregarme en este proyecto es porque encontré una forma diferente de poder evangelizar.
And what really motivated me to join this effort is that I found new ways to teach about God. No? Evangelizar, I don't know exactly how to translate. Thank you.
Entonces, pues me decidí a apoyar este proyecto todos los proyectos de proyección social de la oficina, porque sentí que era injusto que las personas que iban a salir afectadas con los proyectos de industria extractiva
I just felt that it was really important for me to join all the area of the social branch of the office, because I felt that all the communities that were going to be affected by the mining projects
fueran las mismas personas y comunidades que habían sido afectadas durante la guerra civil.
were going to be really the same communities that have been affected by the civil war.
Así es que, pues yo sé bien que la columna vertebral de nuestra espiritualidad es el bien común. Y esto también nos lleva a poder defender la vida, de los derechos humanos y los derechos de la tierra también.
And I know really well that what really drives our spirituality is the well-being, and this is why take us to really defend the rights of people and the rights of the land and the natural resources.
Así es que la dignidad de nuestros pueblos es parte de las prioridades que debemos mantener siempre como cristianos.
And I feel that the dignity of our peoples is really what we need to keep as Christians.
Bueno, ustedes deberán de preguntarse ¿y por qué están hablando de la minería metálica en esta conferencia donde estamos hablando sobre la justicia de alimentos?
And maybe you were wondering since the beginning why this panel is about, a lot of it is about mining and extractive industries. Well, this is a gathering around food justice.
Y es realmente porque la minería metálica, pues estos proyectos llevan a contaminación no solamente de las aguas, sino también del suelo y de la atmósfera.
This is really because it's so related, all these mining projects and operations, one of the main consequences is really the contamination of the water and the soils.
Así es que si nuestro país decidiera producir minería en El Salvador, prácticamente dejaría de comer a sus habitantes.
So if our country, our government really decided to go for mining exploitation, the end of the day what would happen is that our own people won't have anything to eat.
Bien, ¿por qué nos oponemos en nuestro país a que exista minería metálica?
So why do we really oppose metallic mining in the country?
Y es principalmente porque nuestro país es demasiado pequeño, son parte de los impactos ambientales que genera la extracción de minerales. Tenemos una alta densidad poblacional y somos el segundo país deforestado en el mundo después de Haití.
The environmental impacts are huge. First of all, El Salvador is a very, very small country. There is very little land. There is a very high population density, and is the second country after Haiti to be the most deforested.
Aparte de eso, pues sabemos que una extracción de minerales podría ocasionar contaminación en el agua, en la tierra y por supuesto en la atmósfera. Se utilizan grandes cantidades de agua y lo más importante, la pérdida de la biodiversidad.
These kind of operations utilize huge amounts of water per day, and not only that, but the consequences, incredible amounts of contamination of that water that is being used. The other effect is really the contamination of the soils and the atmosphere, as I already said. And finally, also, there is totally destruction of the biodiversity around.
Traje esta imagen porque quiero que conozcan parte de los lugares que han sido identificados como yacimientos de oro.
This is a map that I wanted to show you so you can see where all the gold belt of El Salvador has been identified. Where are really the richness areas of gold?
Nosotros en El Salvador, toda esa franja que está coloreada en celeste le llamamos el cinturón de oro.
And in El Salvador, we call it the belt of gold. The blue area there that you can see.
Y como ustedes pueden ver, pues está ubicada en nuestra cuenca hidrográfica, que es el río Lempa, el que recorre el 60% de nuestro país.
And what happens is that the gold of belt is really located and it crosses through the river, the main source of water for El Salvador, the river Lempa, that covers the 60% of the territory.
Otros de los impactos que genera la extracción de minerales son los sociales. Y podemos ver que existen violación de derechos humanos, podemos encontrar que la violencia aumenta, la pobreza se crece aún más.
Other impacts aside the environmental impacts are really the social impacts that happens when these operations come to the communities. There is increases violations to the human rights, the violence is increased, the levels of poverty in the communities as well.
En este momento, la ruptura del tejido social en nuestro país se ha visto muy afectada por parte de las empresas mineras, específicamente por la empresa Pacific Green.
And right now you can see also a breakdown in the social fabric, in the division of the families, and this is being something that we see even more right now with the threats of the company Pacific Rim that is come to our country.
Y las imágenes que he presentado son imágenes de líderes de comunidades que ya han sido asesinadas hasta este momento. Ellos fueron asesinados en el 2009.
The pictures that you can see there are from 3 community leaders that were fighting for the communities and were killed in 2009.
Y eso pues a causa de oponerse a la extracción de minerales dentro del territorio.
And this was because they were opposing to the extraction of minerals in the territory.
Y velar porque la impunidad termine en el país también es parte del trabajo de la mesa y es uno de los impactos sociales que también generan este tipo de empresas.
And one of the big efforts of the La Mesa, the round table, is really to end impunity in the country, because this is also another of the big effects of the presence of these operations there.
Bien, ¿cuáles son nuestros desafíos? Quiero mencionar primero que nada que en el año del 2009 se suspenden todos los proyectos o las licencias, todos esos permisos que tenían las empresas de exploración en El Salvador se suspende. Y es a raíz de eso que Pacific Rim hace una demanda con El Salvador, que al inicio eran 77 millones de dólares, pero nos dieron un regalo de Semana Santa y ellos aumentaron lo que ellos desean obtener y ha aumentado a 315 millones de dólares.
So what are the current challenges that the country is facing? First of all, in 2009, the president, because of the social pressure against these operations, decided to suspend the licenses to these companies. And the effects of that is that the company Pacific Rim, which is a Canadian-based company, decided to sue the Salvadorian government. And the beginning, the suit was for $70 million, but just last week we got a present for Holy Week, and they decided to increase the suit for $350 million.
Igualmente, la empresa Commerce Group demanda a El Salvador por 100 millones de dólares debido a la misma situación, pues que sus permisos habían sido detenidos.
Same situation, Commerce Group, which is a US-based company based in Milwaukee. Their license was also suspended, and they decided to sue the country for $100 million, sorry.
Así es que podríamos decir que El Salvador tiene una deuda supuesta, ¿verdad?, por 415 millones de dólares, algo que un estado como el nuestro pues sería imposible poder pagar.
So if the country were to lose these legal cases, it would have a debt of $415 million, and this is an amount that it would be impossible to pay.
Y pues parece ser de que es la manera de presionar de estas empresas para poder obtener nuestros recursos minerales dentro del territorio, sabiendo que un estado tan pobre como el nuestro no puede cancelar y sería una forma de demandar poder que los permisos puedan ser habilitados nuevamente.
So it seems that this is a trend that is happening around, and for us, we feel that this is just a pressure that these companies are imposing in our government because they know that there is no way that we're going to be able to pay. So by which what they want is really to come to our territory and exploit these resources that we have.
Aparte de la problemática que tenemos con las demandas, quiero decir de que son 69 proyectos los que existen para poder ser explotados en nuestro país. Y también nos afectan 41 proyectos que están frontera con Honduras y 7 proyectos más en la frontera con Guatemala.
Aside of these 2 legal cases that are going on, there is already 69 proposed projects that are pending of license, and all of this will depend of how these cases go. And this is only in El Salvador, but there is also 41 projects in Honduras and another set of 7 projects in Guatemala that would affect El Salvador because they are very close to the borders.
Esto quiere decir de que todo el recurso hídrico de la cuenca hidrográfica que se genera en el valle de Guatemala, Honduras y llega hasta El Salvador se encuentra totalmente amenazada por una contaminación, un agua que evidentemente va a contaminar la tierra, y somos países cultivadores de cultivo de maíz, de frijoles. Todo eso se vería afectado, pues no habría más una garantía de tener alimentos sin contaminación.
All these projects are really located at the base of the main sources of water for the three countries actually, but more importantly for El Salvador, because of where some of these projects are at the base of the lakes that give birth to the Rio Lempa. And that water really provides the water for the corn, for the bean crops, and at the end of the day, what we're gonna have is gonna have all this food that is gonna be contaminated. There is no gonna be a way to know if this food that we're gonna eat is gonna be healthy or not.
Bien, para seguir confirmando nuestra lucha, estamos mencionando que vamos a tratar que se apruebe una ley que prohíba la minería metálica en nuestro país. Vamos a seguir impulsando la resistencia contra las demandas en el extranjero, nosotros como comunidades. Igualmente que la impunidad sea erradicada. Igual, pues queremos que sean investigados los asesinatos de los compañeros que son únicamente defensores de los derechos humanos. Cualquier ambientalista es una persona defensora de derechos humanos. Y que los proyectos que se encuentran fronteras con El Salvador también sean detenidos.
So our struggle continues, and some of the key goals that we have is, first of all, the approval of a law that would ban permanently metallic mining in the country. The second point is really to confront these legal suits that are happening and just to make sure that El Salvador wins these cases. Thirdly is really to end the impunity, and in particular just to find a response to the 3 killings that happened in 2009 of people that were just defending the rights of human beings and the rights of the environment. And lastly, also making sure and ensure that all these projects that are happening in Guatemala and Honduras don't affect our population and our water.
Así es que quiero igual hacerles una invitación, así como yo como persona de iglesia, igualmente me inspiro mucho en Monseñor Romero. Quiero únicamente leerles unas pequeñas palabras para recordar nuestro compromiso como cristiano. Y es que para saber si Dios se encuentra cerca de nosotros, no necesariamente debemos estar en oración, sino también preverle al pobre, al desnudo, al hambriento y al desaparecido esa esperanza que Dios está con nosotros siempre.
And lastly, I just want to invite everyone to be inspired and to continue in this struggle. And as someone from the faith, coming from my faith, and being someone that's been very inspired by Monsignor Romero, I'm going to translate this reading that she just read. Está bien. Sí. Just to know if God is close to us is only that for ones that are taking care and are worried about the one who's hungry, the one who doesn't have any clothes, the one who is living in poverty, the one who's disappeared and tortured.
Muchas gracias. Y quiero mencionar que el afiche dice: la minería contamina nuestra agua. Si tú no lo impides, nadie lo hará.
Thank you very much. And lastly, just want to mention that it says here, mining will pollute our waters. If you don't stop it, nobody will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our panelists. I think we have a little bit of time, so I think the idea now would be to have some comments or questions and answers from the audience. I just want to say, overall, Oxfam was really excited to put this panel together and very interested in the theme of the Ecumenical Advocacy Days this year about food justice and looking at the food system and making it more just. And the examples we raised here are meant to partly to make a point, which is that food justice is only partly about food. And in fact, it's only partly about agriculture. In fact, food justice requires a lot of systemic changes in order to make food justice and food security a reality. And we have examples here of where things that go far beyond what we think of as agriculture or food are having a very big impact on the food security and the food justice in these places. We have mining going on that's destroying water and competing for land. We have the biofuels industry, which is voraciously trying to consume land that farmers are using. So Oxfam's approach is to try to take a systemic approach and to recognize that problems, the most salient feature of a problem often isn't the deepest and most important reason. Sometimes we're treating symptoms when we need to get to root causes. The examples we raised today are meant to sort of point out that as we pursue food justice, we have to pay attention to food and, of course, to agriculture. But we also need to recognize that there are other structural elements to our lives, to our systems, to our governments, and we need to address those too in order to ensure food justice. So this is the broader theme, especially focused on the intense and intensifying competition for land around the world. Anywhere where there's land, we see a drive to secure it for whatever purpose, and often the poorest people are at the wrong end of the deal. Okay, so I'll take some questions, and this is a cordless microphone, so I'll just hand it to the panelists. Please, and if you don't mind to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Nia Kwete. I live here in Washington, but I was born in Ghana. I have a two-part question. For the sister from El Salvador, in her pictures, she showed 3 people who were killed. The 2 men had the same name, last name, and I was wondering whether they are related. The second part of my question is for my brother from Ghana. When the El Salvador lady spoke, she mentioned some of the things that the government in El Salvador was doing. Now, Ghana has a great reputation these days, at least in this country, including for our democracy. So my question is, what is our democratic government doing?
So can I hand you the microphone?
Sí, gracias. Pues Marcelo y Ramiro no eran parientes. En estas localidades los apellidos coinciden mucho porque son comunidades pequeñas.
Thank you for your question. They were not relatives, but it's very normal usually that in these small communities people have the same last name.
Y la mujer que estaba ahí, cuando ella falleció, estaba embarazada de 8 meses. Y ese bebé que vieron igual en la foto también falleció con ella.
And I wanted to say also that the woman that you saw in the picture, when she was killed, she was 8 months pregnant, and she was carrying her 2-year-old boy who also was dead.
Thank you very much, my brother, for the question. If you would recall, mining in Ghana was being done by the state until the structural adjustment that there was a paradigm shift to private enterprises working on it. And so the state's role then was to become a promoter and a regulator. But unfortunately, we had a situation where the function of regulation was cut down, and much of the promotion was what was going on. So government found itself in a very dire situation, inviting foreign direct investment into these sectors to revamp the sector that was already collapsing, and at the same time regulating the sector. So invariably what we found was that government was doing more promotional work than the regulatory work. And so that has been the situation. Of late, due to certain events that happened within the country, one was the cyanide spillage of Newmont, Ghana in 2009, that government found Newmont liable for the spillage and imposed a fine, which Newmont readily paid. But it happened in the oil sector when Cosmos Energy also spilled sludge into the river, the sea. Government tried to impose that type of fine on Cosmos, and Cosmos said, no, hold it there. Do you have any laws that gives you the power to impose such fine? And government realized that environmental laws were not in place that could allow it to impose that kind of fine on Newmont. So eventually they negotiated, and so the Cosmos paid some amount of money. So what government is now doing is trying to regulate or trying to improve upon the environmental laws that exist in the country to see if we can contain some of these situations. But there's always institutional challenges in relation to how government is supposed to go about it, because it was the environmental ministry that is taking the initiative. And in relation to mining, is the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources that has the power. So these two ministries are not seen as to who is supposed to be the front line to lead this process. And that has stalled the process for some time now. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, here.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Oswald from Seattle, the great battle in Seattle, and my issue is about the free trade agreements. None of our speakers mentioned them. Is this an issue that Oxfam is working on, and is this and the newest free trade agreement that's being proposed, which is another agreement on steroids that's being promoted by the administration? Would any of our speakers, or would you address this issue?
Well, I think the our guest from excuse me, from El Salvador might be able to speak to the effects of the Central America Free Trade Agreement, because the cases, the suits, I think, are taken up under the Free Trade Agreement. Sophia, is that something we can comment on? Yeah.
Sorry, we're just discussing who's going to answer the question. And Caroline is asking me just to provide some ideas. In the case of El Salvador, definitely the two cases, Pacific Rim presented the suit under the free trade agreement. But being a Canadian company, what they decided to do is to open up an office in Nevada to try to go under the case. And the final decision by the EAD, the entity that it needs to decide about this case, was that the free trade agreement would not apply for this case, but there is a law in El Salvador, the investment law, and one of the articles that allows the ICSID to still be the entity to decide about this. So there is definitely a consequence of what is going on in terms of the free trade agreement that the government signed with the US. And for the Commerce Group case, being a US-based company, yes, they did it under the free trade agreements. I don't know if that is responding to your question.
So just briefly and broadly speaking, Oxfam has opposed free trade agreements like the CAFTA, partly for the reasons that these cases point out, which is that it gives an undue right or privilege for foreign companies to bring cases against governments. And so it's a big problem, and it's showing up in cases like the ones in El Salvador. There are new free trade agreements that have been proposed, and we're looking at those carefully. They, in general, have the same problems that the ones like the Central America Free Trade Agreement have had. So we expect to have similar concerns about them. It hasn't been our main focus in the last year or two, but we probably will have to pay more attention, because this big one with around the Pacific Rim is being pushed very aggressively. Okay, more questions?
Good afternoon. My name is Tamika Montgomery, and I am from Indianapolis, Indiana. And I would just like to say thank you very much for sharing your stories with us on today. My heart is broken and my spirit is very heavy. And so it's my prayer that in God breaking my heart, that God will cause me to do something about the injustices.
Yoo-hoo.
Thank you for that.
So, right here.
Please.
Liz Knott from Social Ministries Task Force in Des Moines. It seems to me that a number of issues apply to the international document on human rights, what is right for every person. So where has there been any appeal to the General Assembly? Oh, yeah, Presbyterian. The United Nations, and if so, what is the response? Is anything nationally being done to address some of these issues?
Thanks for the question. Maybe I can put it to the panelists about how to address human rights violations in your countries. Are you trying to use the judicial system in Ghana or Guatemala? Do you feel like that's an effective way of approaching the question? Augustine, do you want to try?
Yes, thank you very much. We in Ghana have been using the domestic legal system in trying to redress most of these human rights violations that are taking place in the mining sector. We've advocated using these international human rights instruments there. There are instances other group of people have documented and forwarded this nature of violations in these mining communities to the UN body on human rights commission in Geneva. Well, what has been the outcome is still not very clear to me now. But what we've been doing is using these human rights instruments within the domestic setting. And then fortunately, we've also been able to have the National Human Rights Commission of Ghana, which undertook an investigation into most of these violations, and in 2008 came out with a report that really confirmed most of the issues that I've brought out here and most of the violations that have referred to. But beyond that, not much has been done either by the national government in resolving most of these issues or within the UN system in ensuring that the national government resolve most of these issues.
Well, in the case of Guatemala, the private owners of the land, they have the legal documents, but the communities are really the historical owners of that land. So we have a very difficult situation because legally they have the documents, and so United Nations have had a mission, and just a report has just been produced saying what's going on, and at least calling the authorities and the private owners to observe the rules on evictions. That's the way they are right now. They are addressing the problem. And also the communities and some support organizations went to the American State Organization? Okay, thank you. And we asked for some protectory measures, and this asks for the government to at least give them food for the time it gets to solve the problem of land. But the government presses all the time to get rid of these measures. So a lot of advocacy work has to be done before this commission, and also we work with very close to the United Nations, the High Commissioner on Human Rights, to observe, to analyze what's going on. But the main problem is about private property of land, which in Guatemala it's assumed as a global principle. And we have to discuss this among Guatemalans and try to break this form of addressing the problem, because private property cannot be superior to the right of life. Mhm.
Just a last point about the case in El Salvador. There is one case called Cerro Blanco, one of the ones that are located in the border of Guatemala. It's basically a mining located in Guatemala. And some of the groups that are part of La Mesa decided to put forward a report about what are going to be the impacts of this project in the waters of El Salvador, and together with the ombudsman, the human rights ombudsman of El Salvador, they presented this case. And last year they came to Washington to present that report and try to talk about this at the Inter-American Human Rights Commission. But they were said that they could not do it because they are not from Guatemala and the mine is located in Guatemala. So now the next step is to reach out and open up more alliances with the communities located in Guatemala so they can all together put forward this demand and this request for precautionary measures at the Human Rights Commission.
You want one more?
Excuse me, I'm going to add that also I came here to Washington 5 years ago, I think, to try to explain the problem with congressmen who were establishing biofuels targets. And the same we did with European Parliament, because this is what really is skyrocketing the expansion of plantations for biofuels. So this is a global problem where we can work together, Guatemalans and US citizens, to address our governments and to stop. That is why Oxfam has been proposing a moratorium, as well as other organizations, on this biofuels issue.
Okay, I want to make sure we have time for a break before panels, so a couple more questions. Thank you.
Yes, mine isn't so much a question as a comment that I realized. You know, I kept thinking in terms of hunger and also related to that of immigration, in terms of what kinds of things we want to ask our government to do. And I realized listening to these talks now, it's not just about what we want to do, but what we want to stop. I remember years ago the thing about hunger, that you can give a person a fish and you feed him for a day, you teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. That's not true if we allow our companies to contaminate their fishing places. Same with seeds. Providing them seeds doesn't do any good if we allow these companies to contaminate the land. So I realized it's not just about doing something, but stopping something.
Very well said. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jean Duff from Washington, D.C. I'd like to thank each member of the panel and Oxfam for taking this really global, sort of amorphous stuff and translating it back to us through your stories in a way that is deeply touching. So much so that I found myself, during the presentation, holding something that many of you will also hold very precious, as I do. You can't see it for most of you, but it's my gold wedding ring. And it makes me think that this costs too much. I would like to ask the panelists and Oxfam to talk about the question, or talk to the question of models that work, models that are consultative, that benefit community, that are sustainable. There's a lot of talk about sustainable mining. What's your experience? What are the possibilities? I hear from our Guatemalan sister about a proposed ban on all mining. Is that realistic? Is it reasonable? Are there models that are sustainable? Thank you so much.
It's a great question. Before I turn it to the panelists to respond, I'll point out that we do have some tables that are hidden by the escalators. And you can definitely get more information both on our extractive industries focused work and more generally on food justice work that we're doing. So there's a wealth of resources there that should help you with that question. But I'd like to give the panelists a chance to respond on mining generally and the sustainability issues.
I'm going to just address a little bit the question because it's really important for us also to say that as Oxfam, we are not an agency that is against mining per se all around the world. That's something that we cannot do because we work in so many different contexts, and in some contexts the issues are very different. In the case of El Salvador and some of the countries in Central America, for sure what we do is really support the rights of the communities and support what they want to say and just defend the right to know and the right to just have a saying on how these projects are going to be affecting them. For the case of El Salvador, yes, the proposal coming from the civil society and everyone there is about banning mine because they see that really in their country this is not sustainable. So in that case, they are for that. In other countries, there are different contexts where we work. In Guatemala, the defense is for the communities because they for sure don't want their mining going on. But in countries for example, as Peru, is a different country. The history of the country is about mining, and some of the communities, I don't know if I could say that there is some good examples exactly of how some communities are able to negotiate with the companies, but we've been playing a role of sitting at the table and just conveying spaces where the communities and the companies and the government have sat together and tried to reach out some agreements for compensation of the lands, for human rights issues, for environmental issues, and where at some point the communities have been happier of what they were before. So that's what I'm going to say in terms of Oxfam and the work that we do on extractives. But now to the panelists.
Well, in Guatemala, there has been a very large and deep process of consulting. Communities have been asking their population whether they want mining or not. And all of them have said, we don't want any mining, but we want to decide on what is going on and what development model we want in our territories. And you have to remind that Guatemala is a mostly indigenous country. We have a 60% of indigenous population, and they have the right to decide on what development model they want to live. And we have also examples of communal indigenous land that over time have decided their rules to make sustainable living in their lands. So we are looking to these examples, and there is a very strong movement to ask for participation and be consulted on these processes.
Well, we would say it comes with a cost. Whether it is bad, maybe we look at the cost-benefit analysis of mining. What model works is really very difficult to put out one, but responsible mining is what every country or every community would look out for. Community participation, as she rightly said, people should be able to decide whether or not they want mining. And if we want mining, how is it supposed to be done? At least that will take off most of the human rights violations and most of the issues that we are talking about. Mining generally, in many countries as it is done now, is an enclave type of sector. It doesn't have linkages with other sectors of the economy. And that is the basic problem in many of the countries, apart from the environmental issues that it creates. In Ghana, for example, we did not, at the time that mining was done underground, there were issues, but not in this large scale. And so, this new method of mining on the surface, I think is not the best for our country, and that probably if we go back to the underground mining, where mining takes place underground, and then the surface land is still available to communities to continue with their farming. I would always, at every point in time, recommend underground mining, and that the underground mining is done in a responsible way. Mining can't, to me, I don't see sustainability in mining anyway. I've never agreed with that, that we would have sustainable mining. No, it is a kind of, excuse my language, a kind of dirty type of thing that will always continue to pollute environment and the waters. So buying best model is underground mining, and mining that is done with community approval, mining that is done with community input as to how the mining is supposed to be done, and then mining that is done in a way that you respect the rights of people who live within the concession. Thank you.
We have one more question over here.
Last question, please.
My name is Robert Owusu. I'm also from Ghana, and I'm from Georgia, Lawrenceville, Georgia. My question goes to my brother from Ghana and maybe to the other panelists as well. And we thank Oxfam for giving this platform for these things to be articulated. About some few years ago, we saw, read, and heard about what happened in Nigeria when the oil companies were being attacked directly by the people who were affected by the outcome of the effects or the actions of the oil companies. Looking at the situation in Ghana now with the surface mining and the way it's affecting the people, over frustration may lead to something that we may not expect. But do you foresee that something of that situation occurring in Ghana where the people, out of over frustration, excessive exploitation, and with no sight of stopping it, would they be, do you see that something happening that people will take the matters into their hand to address the situation as the Nigerians did some years ago?
Augustine.
Thank you very much, my brother. In the past, I would have said this situation was most likely to occur, because in the past, many more communities that are affected by mining operations were so helpless and desperate to the extent that they would want to do anything and everything in order to secure their lands. And the situation in Nigeria was, if you had asked me this same question, maybe around 2000, 2001, I would have said yes, it was likely. But given the type of education and empowerment that have taken place in many of the communities in Ghana, people have realized that there are legal and legitimate ways that they could use within the system in order to have their grievances addressed. And many often when we go into communities and other campaigns that goes on, we restrain communities to use the law and the legal system in order to ensure that they are able to claim whatever right that they have. And that has gone through a lot of communities. There are pockets of resistance that sometimes lead to security personnel being brought in to violate the rights of many of these communities. Fortunately, many more people, civil society, media, have taken up the issue of mining, and it's almost always a daily basis that every effect of it is reported. And that has also helped in reducing the tensions that used to mount within these communities. And just to answer your question short, the situation in Nigeria happening in the mining sector is most unlikely as we speak.
I have one last comment right here from, because being a Catholic boy, sister needs to talk.
I'm Sister Janice McLaughlin from the Maryknoll Sisters, and I've been thinking how we can be in solidarity with all of you, those of us in the North, since the problems you mentioned all have their source in North America, the companies that produce the biofuels, the mining companies. I'm wondering if we could not lobby at the headquarters of these companies, if we could not join or initiate shareholder resolutions, if we could not remove our investments, if we have any, in these corporations that are polluting and taking the land and doing all those negative things you mentioned. So let's work together to really stop all of this. Thank you.
Fantastic. That's a great work plan. Okay, so I think we need to close up, and thank you all for your patience, and I hope it was a useful panel for you. I'd like to just mention a couple quick things. There are other experts that are friends and allies and partners of Oxfam that are here aside from the panelists. So first, let me just urge you to come and speak with the panelists directly if you have other questions or want to think about how to collaborate or do work with them. They'll be here throughout the conference, and I think there's some panels where they're speaking coming up right after lunch. We also have brought some guests here, and I'd like to mention them if I could. Prosper Matondi is Executive Director of the Roosevelt Trust in Zimbabwe and an expert on land and rural development. Take note, we're having them stand up so you can approach them if you're interested. I think Mark Wegriff is in the audience, or he was. He's an Oxfam expert from, he's way back in the room there. Mark is Oxfam staff in the Horn and East and Central Africa, and our resident troublemaker in that region. We have Bayron Milian. He's a professor at the Petén University Center of San Carlos in Guatemala and an expert on land issues in that region. And last is Buba Khan. He's the Africa Policy Officer for ActionAid. He's already been on a panel this morning, I believe. Yeah. And so just pointing them out if you have questions or want to talk about these issues more. All right, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you. I wish you every good luck on the conference.
Again, thank you to Oxfam for their generosity in being here with us. I think it was actually a free lunch with a bonus. So there is such thing as a free lunch with a bonus. We won't be together again as a group today, as a complete group in this plenary. So please make sure you look at your schedule for the various workshops, denominational gatherings, evening things tonight. There will be a film tonight at 9 o'clock. There will also be a chance for, I think, some more of the book signings. And last but not least, Mark, you can put up maybe there's a place for people, if you have a chance to, on a website, advocacydays.org/testify. You can actually, I don't know if you would call it live blogging or what you actually call this, but you can actually type it in there and type in your ways of testifying what's going on here to get that word out there. So it's another way of kind of continuing to share this message with the world. So again, we thank our friends from Oxfam for their generosity. I thank you all. We thank the lunch. And we'll see you all tomorrow morning as a whole group, and we'll see you in the workshops this afternoon.